Hakadosh Boker Tov Masechet Ketubot Daf Kaf Amud Aleph 20a1. If you remember, we just started mentioning the last part of yesterday's shiur was that Rav Sheshat wants to come and say that this is Achasha, which Achasha is the beginning of Hazama. Remember the difference between Achasha and Hazama is that if let's say we are two people, we say that somebody killed someone, and two people say that we didn't kill someone, right? So that this person did not kill someone. So that's called a chasha. We're conflicting evidence, two against two. That's called a chasha. Two say yes, two say no. That is a chasha. What is azama? The two witnesses come and they say about the first two witnesses, how do you guys testify that this guy when he killed? You guys were with us in Honolulu. So that's called hazama. We made you an ed zoman, which means we made you false. When you have conflicting evidence, it's two against two. We don't know who's telling the truth, who's telling the lie. But here it's called azama. So therefore he comes and he says, just like we do not do hazama unless it's in front of those witnesses. So too, so too, we're only going to do hakasha only in front of them. Now remember, here the two witnesses died. So since they died, you can't do it, but it's not in front of them anymore. So Elmaleh Rav Nachman says Rav Nachman to Rav Sheshat, Ilu hava kamanu machishin lehu hava chasha velo mashkichinam behu davle edut mucheshet. He says hashta deletniu de ilu havu lekaman delma havu modelehu mehemne. So he says like this: if right now the edei ashtar were in front of us, and the second witnesses come and they do hachasha. So therefore, what happens? It's called hachasha. We wouldn't pay attention to the document anymore. Because the second that there's hachasha, there's hachasha. But now that you don't have the witnesses because they died, that if they weren't in front of us, maybe they would have admitted to it. That you're going to believe the document. It doesn't make sense from Svara. Why is it that if they're in front of us, right, maybe they would have admitted? And therefore, right now, if they're in front of us, right, and even if they didn't admit it, there would have been two against two. You don't pay attention to the document. So now that they're not in front of us, now you are going to pay attention to the document. Why? Why in the world would you do that? Rav Nachman, but says Rav Nachman, no, you know why? We put two against two. And then we put the money back in the owner's hands, right? Which means, right, that the money in the cheskat ba'alav, which was until now, b'shtar al-ba'a, in the hands of the loveh, b'shtar mecher, in the hands of the mocher, which means that when the Braita says enan nemanim, they're not believed, it just means that they're not believed completely to disqualify the document. But they are going to be believed, la'chishet ha'edut at the beginning, and to put a safek in the document, to put a doubt in the document. Neither the hava nichsed bar shatya, just like the case of the properties of bar shatya. Bar shatya was a person that sometimes he was not there, he was crazy, and sometimes he was normal. So that's why he was called bar shatya. Shatya is a shoteh, a person that's retarded, right? A person that's not 100% there. But bar shatya, this guy, he was sometimes normal and sometimes crazy. He was like a bipolar type of completely off the charts. The Bar Shatya Zabin Nichse, but once happened the Bar Shatya sold the property. Atu betre Amre, and two people came and they said, Keshu Shote Zabin. He sold it when he was not 100% there. Atu betre Amre, Keshu Chalim Zabin. And two people came and they said, no, when he was normal, he sold it. So Amar Rashi comes and he says, Uki tre lehadetre, you're going to put the two against the two. Ve'uki mamona becheska Bar Shatya. And then you put the money in the hands of Bar Shatya, which means that since the properties were him, before the kinyan was done, so therefore we put it back in his hands. So he's a mocher, so you put it back in his hands. But we don't say this. When he has a chazakah that it came from his fathers, meaning that he has a chazakah that it comes from his father and it continues going. He does not have any chazakah that it belongs to his father, but he himself bought it. So maybe when he was crazy, he bought it. When he was crazy, he sold it. So it's not really his. Right? Everything was done when he was crazy. So if everything was done when he was crazy, there's nothing there. That is what the Gemara says. Amar Rabbi Avu says Rabbi Avu, En nizinim et hayadim ela bifnehem. Right? We're only going to do the hazama in front of the witnesses. But we are allowed to do a chasha not in front of them. Okay? However, though, even though hazama not in front of the witness is not considered hazama, however, though it is considered a chasha. So for here, it's considered a chasha. It's not hazama, but it's like a chasha at least. Okay, so Amar more says, if there's witnesses that this is their ktav yad, or you're able to verify the signatures from another document, that somebody went against it, and then they went and they verified it in the bedin, and the witnesses are not believed, right? Only if there was something that went against it, the claim against the document. But if there was no claim against the document, no. So there's a proof to Rabbi. The Amar Rabbi Yasi says Rabbi Yasi, when can you verify signatures? When there was an ur on it, and then the bedin verified it, which means like this. Right now, right, you guys come and you wanted to verify a signature. You're going to come, you're going to take, okay, fine, there's a signature, chazak uru. That's not good enough. Why? Because since at the end of the day, there was never a claim or anything against him. So therefore, what happens is that maybe Bemet, it wasn't signature from the beginning. Meaning whatever you just took was nothing. When is it good? If there was a claim against the document. And now Betin have to come and verify the signatures. When they come and they verify the signatures, and now they put a stamp on it. These are verified signatures. From then on, those signatures are good. They're bona fide. But before then, no. Why? Because maybe Bemet, from the beginning, they were never good signatures. So Amri Nardai come and they say, they're not going to be mikayim the shtar unless it's going to be from two shtarot of ketubot or from two sadot. And that's only if, right, they ate for 3 years. The owners ate there for 3 years and without any problem, which means like this. First of all, you have to take the signatures from two documents, whether it's two shtarot of a ketubah, right, that they signed for people, or two documents of fields. Right now, what happened is that the owners, meaning the new owners of those fields, they were able to eat there for 3 years without any problems. Why? Because then we said, listen, it was a good document, and the proof that nobody ever came and reclaimed, or nobody reclaimed, right? They bought it. Yeah, nobody ever came and they went against them. So Amar Shimi Barashi says of Shimi Barashi, plus these documents have to come from somebody else. That's small, but if it's coming from he himself, right, the one that has the shtar and he wants to be mekayim the shtar, no, they cannot come and be mekayim the shtar shlishi, which means that even though you do have two documents as well, you cannot be mekayim the shtar, because I'm going to say that, listen, you know what you did? You went and you signed, you forged all 3 signatures. You forged 2 ketubot and this signature, right, this signature on this deal. And all of a sudden now you come to Betin, listen, I have 2 ketubot and I have my signature. I have like my document. Here it is. The 2 documents have to come from somewhere else, right? Whether it's 2 ketubot or whatever, has to come. So that way I can actually verify the signatures and everything being done well. Because if not, I'm going to suspect you forged all 3. So says the Gemara, Maishna tachat yedei atzmo delo dil maziyuf mizayef, mitachat yedei achenami dil mazal v'chaza v'ata v'zayef. 1 second, the same thing happens like this. What's the difference between if it comes to his own hands, we said no because maybe he forged it. If it's coming through someone else, also the exact same thing. Maybe he went to his friend, he saw the documents, he comes and he tells people, listen, I'm looking for this document, the wedding, whatever, that was signed by this signature. So they come and they say, yeah, I have one. So they come, he sees the signature, and he's learning the signature, how to forge it. And then he comes home and he forges it. And then it's coming from somebody else. So he says, he says, no. It's very difficult to be mechaven, to be mezayef, if the chatimot are not in front of him. Meaning like this: if you want to forge a document, you need the other signature in front of you. You cannot go somewhere, learn it, and then come back and try to forge it. Very difficult. Because if you're going to go there and start practicing it, the guy's going to say, "What are you doing?" You understand? So that means you're just looking at it, right? And we didn't have like in the olden days that you could take a picture and then you have like the original. No. There was nothing. You look at it. Okay, so now what? So you looked at it very good. It's impossible to look at it and have such a kavanah that now you're going to come home and from that which you saw it before, you're going to forge it in the exact same way. Impossible. Yeah, you can't be mechaven so much like that. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. כותב אדם עדותו על השטר, ומעיד עליה אפילו לאחר כמה שנים. Do you know a person could come, and if you're an ed, right, so you're a witness. Now you're afraid that maybe you're going to forget what you saw. So you could actually write down on a piece of paper everything that happened, and you could hide it. And then you could be me'id, according to that which you testified, that which you wrote down, even after a few years, right? Which means that you could come and be me'id balpeh on smach, that which you wrote, even after a few years, even though now you don't even remember all the details, but you wrote everything down. Now this, by the way, is usually called ed mipi ed, right? That means an ed that comes and he writes down his testimony and he gives it to the betin. The betin do not accept this testimony, because it says in the betin al pi shnei edim or pi shlosha edim yikud lomar. So they say mipi hem v'lo mipi katzavam, which means that we only go according to their mouths and not according to what they write down. Okay, and that's also done the Shulchan Aruch and everything. But here, though, the Gemara is teaching us that even though you're right, that means if they're going to come and send in written testimony, we do not accept it. It has to be a verbal testimony. However, though, if they are testifying verbally upon which they wrote down on their writings, it's going to be okay. So Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Behu shezochra me'atzmo. But this is as long as he remembers the ikar of the edut, right, with himself. But he's only being helped, right, just in the details. Meaning, he remembers the testimony, but he doesn't remember the nitty-bitties. He doesn't remember the details. So on that, he takes his notes, and then he's able to remember with the details. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if he doesn't remember anything himself. Meaning, even though he forgot even the testimony. He forgot even that he did. But all of a sudden, he starts looking home, and he finds it. He says, no, you're right. I was there. I witnessed this, and this is what I wrote. So then he's going to be believed. So machloke between Rabbi Yochanan, and Rav Huna. Okay? So Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Shema mina bin Rabbi Yochanan, we learn from Rabbi Yochanan, Hani beitrei diyade saduta, when you have two witnesses that they remember an edut, umin shechad minayu, but one of them forgot, right? La titneshe minan. Remember, titneshe or minshe means to forget. Okay? Mid karchad lechavre. So one of them reminds his friend, right? And then it's going to be okay. And then the other one could come and testify. What happens now if the Ed himself is reminded by the Baldin himself, right? What's halacha? Do we suspect that the Baldin is coming and changing some of the details for the good or not? Right? So that's the question. Yeah. Do we suspect that now the Baldin comes and he starts reminding you, what are you talking about? You were the one on the witnesses. You don't remember that this and this happened. So now, we're not going to suspect it. Rav Chaviva Amar, afilu atzmo. Rav Chaviva says, even if the Baldin, the one, the litigant, the one that's being testified about, he reminds him, he could testify. And we're not going to suspect that he's going to change details. Morbe de Ravashi Amar, Rashi says, no, atzmo lo. So it's a machloket between Rav Chaviva and Morbe de Ravashi. What is halacha? Atzmo lo. No, you cannot do it. Why? Because we do suspect, right, that maybe you're going to start doing any monkey business, right? Kafa mubet, daf kafa mubet 20b, the tzur b'merabanan. However, though, if it's a tzur b'merabanan, which means tzur b'merabanan means that if it's going to be if the ed is a tamid chacham, afilu asmo, even himself, it's going to help. Ki ad Ravashi avayediya le b'saaduta le Rav Kahana, because Ravashi, he knew an edut for the good of Rav Kahana. So Elmaleh, Rav Kahana says, "Midachid mor hay saduta." Do you remember this type of edut? Elmaleh lo. He says no. Velavhachi v'achi avai. He says what? This didn't happen. Elmaleh lo yadana. He says no. Lesof itkar Ravash. Right? Lesof itkar. At the end, he didn't remember Ravashi. Means he remembered asidle, and he went and testified for Rav Kahana. So Chazi le Rav Kahana d'mei mechasem. Then he saw that Rav Kahana was chasem. What does that mean? He was like mipakpek. Right? 1 second. How does he come and how does he start testifying afterwards? Elmaleh, so Ravashi comes and tells Rav Kahana, Mi savarta lach kasamichta? What, do you think that I'm being somech al you? Ana hu diremaya nafshay v'yitkare. I went and I started putting my mind to it until I remembered all the action. So at the beginning, Rav Kahana was a little bit surprised because he was telling him, do you remember? I was like, he comes and he testifies. He's like, wow, this is very interesting. No, I went and I put my mind to it until I was able to remember all the details, and then I came and I testified.
This example is there to
Number two, very important. It says over here that also we learn from here that an ed, that at the beginning that he says he doesn't remember, he's believed to come, right, and say that he put his mind to it and then he remembered the details. And we don't say, which means like this. Usually there's a general rule. Once you testify or once you say something, you can't retract. Here we don't say that. So imagine right now, I say, doctor, you remember this? You tell me no. I said, no, but you don't remember that. I said, yeah, no, you're right. I do remember, right? You're allowed to do that. Okay. Right? That's what we're saying. That is the chidush of what we're saying until now. Okay? Tzanan hata. Right? We learned in the Mishnah in Aholot. Hatruliyot. Right? These are talim nemuchim, which are krovot ben il ben aderech. Right? Whether it's chadashot or ben yishanot, tmeot. So basically a tel is like a little mount. Right? A little, where the ground is a little bit higher. So these mounts, right, which are close, whether it's to the city or to the path, whether they're new or whether they're old, tmeot, we suspect that somebody's buried there, right? That's how, by the way, they find many times. Yeah, they come. If it's going to be further away from the city, which means that a woman cannot go there, and we're not going to suspect that maybe she buried there a nefel, right? Like a fetus or things like that. Chadashot teorot. So if it's new, right, which means, right, that he knew that this is weird. What's it? So then it's going to be tahor. If it's yeshanot, it's going to be timeot. Why? Because they probably forgot that somebody maybe was buried there, and that's it. So ezoi krova. What is krova exactly? What is karov? Right? Chamishim ama ve'ezoi yeshana shishim shana. So he says if it's going to be considered close to the city, right? And then we said that if even it's going to be new, that if it's going to be within 50 amot. Okay, what is considered old? That it's going to be tameh even if it's going to be further away. Right? 60 years old. These are the words that Rabbi. No, when it says krova, it means that there's nothing which is closer to it. And yeshana, shenadam zufra, that nobody remembers about it. Okay? So, my eid, my derech. What exactly is the eid? And what is the derech that we mentioned in the Mishnah? So again, this is all to do with that which we mentioned about we're trying to get the remembrance of the witnesses. Right? Because that's what we were speaking about until now. So now we're trying to find out when are you believed or not believed, or when exactly are we going to start judging on Tumah? So what is an Eid and what is a Derech? Ilema Eid Mamash. If you're going to tell me it's the Mamash, the city, and the Derech is Derech Mamash, Misfeika Mimachzakin Tumah? I don't understand you. Here we have a doubt. You're going to come and tell me now that we're going to say that there's Tumah Misafek? V'amar Reshakish, says Reshakish, Ilam Matzu V'tiaru Eretz Yisrael. Right? What does that mean? The Chachamim, they went and they found and they permitted all the land of Israel, which means Chachamim went and they said, right, that they went and they said that, we're not going to stop, make everything tameh misafek. So why are we going to come and for no reason just say that this is going to be tameh misafek? So Amar Rabbi Zera says, no. We're talking about a city which is close to Bet HaKvarot, the derech Bet HaKvarot, which means that we're going to suspect that there is a tumah there. Why are we going to suspect that there is a tumah there? Because at the end of the day, right, this is what's going on, right? This is so they were on the way to the Bet HaKvarot, and this is what happened. They buried them on the spots. Okay, right? I understand for the Bet HaKvarot, there's even the mitrame ben hashmashot, because sometimes it happens that they're on the way to the cemetery. It's already been hashmashot. Umikru kavru betel, and then when they come and they're going to, right, b'mikre they come, and there's no time to do it. Let's say it was before Shabbat, and then they're going to come and they're going to bury him in this tel, and that's what they just did. But if it's going to be, so that's the derech of the Bet HaKvarot, which means it's on the way to the Bet HaKvarot, and it became all of a sudden too late. They got stuck in traffic, and all of a sudden, so they're going to bury him, whatever it is, on the way to the Bet HaKvarot, right? What, that didn't happen with Rachel? Yeah? But if it's a city which is close by to the Bet HaKvarot, says what? Why are we going to suspect now that they went and they buried him in the Tel Karov La'id? Says Rabbi Chanina, mitoch shenashim kovrot sham niflein. Says no. The women, they bury their fetuses there, which means, right, that they come and they bury a fetus there, and which means that the different, like evanim, which are bad, right, they come and they bury their arms, limbs, right, their limbs. They're different types of, right, different. Well, here it's the literal translation is zroa's arms, right, but it's huadin, it's any type of limbs that come off. They would bury them, Okay, so therefore they have to actually bury these things. So it's important. So because of that, right, we come and we have to actually suspect that they are going to be burying them on the way to the Bet Chayim, which is even to the city. If it's until 50 amot from the city, she'll go by herself in the city, and therefore we suspect of tum'ah, right? Even if nobody knows what's going on or what happened over there. Tfei, but not more. Dabra inish ba'adal bet hakvarot azla. So then she'll take somebody with her and she'll go to the Bet HaKvarot, right? Hilkach, therefore, to Ma'beret Tzalem Mechaskinim, we're not going to be mechzik, right? Why? Because if it's more than 50 amot, she's not going to go by herself. She's afraid going outside of the city by herself, a woman, right? Stam outside of the city. It's not like nowadays that, you go in the cars. Even nowadays, it depends where people are going to go, but where you're not going to be suspecting that she's going on her own, this, that, you understand? So therefore, within 50 amot, which is not a lot, you understand? Within 50 amot, so then yes, we're going to suspect it. More than 50 amot of the radius, yes. Amar Rav Chasta, says Rav Chasta, yes. Right, says Rav Chasta, Shemamina, we learn from here, Rabbi Hai Saduta, Chitin Shenim Midkat, Tfelo Midkat. That means if you learn from Rabbi that until 60 years, you would remember testimony. After that, you don't remember testimony. That's what he said. If it's going to be Yashan, it's more than 60 years. But it says, but it's not true. Because there, people don't pay attention to it. To do with the testimony, then yes, people would remember even more than 60 years. There, right? Nobody's asking you to testify. So now, if you're not going to remember, it's like 60 years ago, was this mount here or not here? This, that. You didn't need to remember, so you're not going to remember. So after 60 years, you're not going to remember. But if somebody's giving you testimony that you have to testify in a bedin, that at any moment you'll always be needed, that even if it's more than 60 years, you will remember. Why? Because then you need it. Fine. Says the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Ze omer ktav yadi v'ze ktav yadi shel chaveri. Yado shel chaveri. Imagine a person comes and he says, this is my signature on the document, and this is the ktav yad of my friend. Ze omer, and one person says, Ze ktav yadi v'ze ktav yadi shel chaveri. Yado shel chaveri. One person says, this is my signature, the signature of my friend. Harelu ne'emanim. Right? Because since you have two witnesses testifying on each chatima, it's going to be okay. However, though, Ze omer ze ktav yadi v'ze omer ze ktav yadi. But if each one just says, this is my signature, and nobody remembers their friend's signature, so then they have to be mitzaref somebody else from the outside to testify the signatures on themselves. Why? Because if not, each one only has one signature. Beforehand, each one was an ed on his own signature and on his friend's signature. And the other guy was an ed on his signature and his friend's signature. So you have two edim on each signature. Okay? On themselves, yes. Two edim. One on himself and him on his friend. One on himself, one on his friend. So there were two witnesses. Two witnesses for two signatures. But if each one just says, this is my signature, this is my signature, you only have one witness. So they need somebody else to testify with it. These are the words of Rabbi. Hachamim omerim, says Chachamim. Enam tzechim letzaref imayim ached. They don't need it to ela ne'eman adam lomar ktav yadi. A person is believed to say, this is my signature. The second that you're believed to say, this is my signature. That's it. You don't need any more. You have to verify. No. This is my signature. I believe. That's all that you need to do. Right? That's all that you need to do. Okay? When a person wants to come and they want to say, yeah,